And I met someone recently who was like, yeah, my family's never followed it. We do what we want when we want. So they make different, they essentially what this person said was, we made a different meal every Thanksgiving when I was growing up. So we didn't do turkey. We didn't do stuffing. We didn't do mashed potatoes. We didn't do cranberry sauce. We did a different meal every Thanksgiving. This might be progressive to some. I don't know. I found it interesting. But then I started, well, what kind of meals did you do? Oh, well, we did a pizza night one night. I'm like, pizza? Isn't that like every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday at your house? You made pizza a special occasion for family? Pizza's what you get when you have like acquaintances over. Like we need to feed them. Let's call Domino's. If you live in the Midwest, where I live, if you live somewhere else that has good pizza, then you're like, well, let's get the good shit. We have good pizza now, but when I was a kid, please, we had chain pizza and it all sucked. It still sucks, but pizza for Thanksgiving. Oh, and then one year we did tacos. I had Taco Tuesday last night at my house. What are we talking about here? You did tacos for Thanksgiving? I love tacos. I love tacos. We try to change it up too. We do a different version of Taco Tuesday every Tuesday. So like fajita quesadillas and whether it be steak or chicken. And then we do our original beef crunchy tacos. And sometimes we do shrimp tacos and soft shells, but it's tacos. It's not hard to do. What are we doing here? And then I said, okay, give me one more because you're losing me here. You had me in the beginning, but now you've lost me. We did a sushi Thanksgiving as well. Okay, who made the sushi? Oh no, we ordered it to go. All right, you suck, and your family's Thanksgiving sucked. So I'm not. I no longer am talking to this person about Thanksgiving anymore. Pizza, tacos, and sushi. Now the sushi, I was intrigued because like if you guys are making that at your home, good for you. But yeah, you're ordering it to go. All this stuff you ordered. They probably didn't even make the tacos. They probably ordered those to go as well. You know they did it with the pizza. So that's why Thanksgiving has always been a weird one to me. It's like people have different things that they do. And I got asked today by someone, they're like, what's your favorite Thanksgiving dish? Right. Now look, I love to eat. And I love a meal that is based around delicious sides. I love protein. Protein's with every meal for me. There's always a protein and then it's complemented by something. So Thanksgiving's always been like, well, yeah, just make the turkey correctly and I'm going to eat it. I go white meat, not dark meat. It's all dry to me anyway. And people go like, well, you eat the white meat. It's dry. And it's all dry. It's all dry to me. But when it comes to Thanksgiving, I'm all about the sides. And my favorite kind of sides are the veggie casseroles, which I'm going to make tomorrow morning. I'm going to make two. One is going to be broccoli based, and the other is going to be cauliflower based because I love veggie casseroles. And then we had a tradition in my family on one of the sides where my uncle made these rolls. I don't know what this dude did to this bread, but it is just, we'd be leaving to go home, and I'd be in the back seat of the car as a kid, just rolling each hand, just delicious. Someone has the recipe. We'll see if it's. I can't. I don't eat bread anymore. Unfortunately, as an adult, I can't. I'll shit my pants for days. But someone still has the recipe. Apparently, maybe I'll take like a nibble this year because I talked about it now, just to prove that I'm not crazy. But yeah, talking with Thanksgiving with people, it's always a funny thing because everybody's traditions and favorite things and this and that. And I was actually just having this conversation with my wife. I go, we were watching the news this morning as we were drinking our coffee, and they were talking about busiest travel day of the year. And I go, why? It's because most people say it's because kids are coming home from college, right? They got to fly home from college. They've been away. They're coming home for Thanksgiving. You've been gone a month and a half at most. Stay there, party, eat a brownie, get laid, drink a beer or two or seven. What are you coming home for? You're not missing anything. It's the same thing it was before you went to college. So that's an easy fix to the travel conspiracy or the travel problem. College kids, stop coming home for Thanksgiving. As much as your parents want you to, trust me, they don't want you to. They don't miss you. It's been a month and a half. Stay there. Party. Have a good time. Be a college kid. Live your life. You don't need to go home for Thanksgiving and then screw it up for the few adults that want to travel for whatever reason, whether it be work or to go see their side piece or their second family. I don't know. But the best conversation I had about Thanksgiving was, what is the best movie based around Thanksgiving? And I said this to the person that asked me this. I go, well, you're joking, right? Because the best one is Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. And then there's just everything else, right? If you don't think Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, A, is a good Thanksgiving movie, or B, is a good movie, then we can't be friends. You're crazy. So I thought about it beyond that movie, and I'm like, well, I think there are two that come to mind that are actually, that I can think of, like, based around Thanksgiving, that I would consider to be good movies. So Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is number one. Never going to change my mind. Then I say number two is the movie Dutch. Stars Ed O'Neill from Married with Children. He plays the boyfriend of the mom who's, the mom to a kid who's off at some boarding school or private school. And Ed O'Neill volunteers to go pick him up and bring him home for Thanksgiving. The kid is played by Ethan Embry, I believe is his name. He was in That Thing You Can't Do and Can't Hardly Wait. It's a really good movie about Thanksgiving. Ed O'Neill is hilarious in it. It's a good movie. And I remember so vividly the reason that I like this movie is because that kid was like a young kid and he got laid in the movie. And like, to us kids at that, we like same age as that kid at the time, we're like, oh, he got laid by like a stranger, like a girl he just met. Like, what's that like? So that was like a topic of conversation, as you can imagine. The other one that I would say, number three, would be Son-in-Law, starring Pauly Shore and Carla Gugino. Great movie, underrated movie, if you ask me, from the 90s, where Pauly Shore comes home with this girl who believes she's going to be proposed to, poses as her new fiance, and this all occurs during Thanksgiving break, kids coming home from college. By the way, they were in California, and she wants to go back to rural Alabama or wherever the fuck she's from. They stay in California. Why would you go home for Thanksgiving? You're in California. You're in Los Angeles. I think she went to UCLA. Stop. Or USC. One or the other. But those are my top three Thanksgiving movies. And then from there, I can't really, and again, I could look this up now and bore you all, but I'm not. So leave in the comments, what are your favorite Thanksgiving movies? Because those were the three that I thought of that are really centered around Thanksgiving. There are movies that have Thanksgiving celebrations in them, like Four Brothers, for instance, which I love. Love that movie. It's not about Thanksgiving. There is a Thanksgiving dinner that happens, but it's not about Thanksgiving. So, but I'm curious to know what you know about those types. It doesn't have to be centered around Thanksgiving. Leave in the comments. I'd love to know what you think about this. But yeah, Thanksgiving's a weird one, and I actually saw a conversation recently on another podcast where they were origins of Thanksgiving. And it's kind of funny, like what we learned when we were kids, my generation anyway, about Thanksgiving, to like think about it now and think like, oh man, would they teach that now? I'd have to ask. I have nieces and nephews that are still learning about this shit. Maybe I need to ask them, but I would imagine no. But anyway, happy Thanksgiving to you all. Give thanks to whatever you need to. I am thankful for the best wife and the best kid and the best soon-to-be kid one could ask for. And that's as sentimental as I'm going to get on this shit. So moving on from that, a person that I've talked about a lot on this podcast is Eminem, and mainly about how I'm not a fan. And I'm still not, just of his overall hip hop thing. I'm not. What I have become a fan of recently is how, and I always kind of knew this about him, but it's come out a lot more recently, and especially now with him being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is huge. I think it's huge for rock and roll. It's huge for him, and it's huge for hip hop. It's also huge for a lot of rappers who are going to come after him, and especially a lot that have come before him. I think it's going to open up doors. We'll get into that in a second. But yeah, I've hated on him a lot, and it's just really it's petty nonsense. Will I acknowledge the fact that I think he's a good artist? Of course, of course. You can't deny that he's good at what he does. I'm still not a fan of his style, his voice, his everything. What I do appreciate about him is how he's always, and this is something that I've, because I grew up in the Eminem era, I know that he's always given major props to, and he's always shown appreciation to the rappers and the hip hop artists that have come before him. And he attributes his success, his career, and his style and his overall abilities to those guys and gals. So that's always been a huge thing that I respect about him. And it's the biggest thing that I respect about his induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, because while I appreciate him for that, I also don't, I think he's a pompous shithead sometimes. I think he just goes off on these tangents, and I think he's got a pouty face all the time. And I think a lot of times when he could be a positive sort of influence on the culture and society in general, he's kind of a shithead. And what I expected out of him at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony is not what we got. Meaning, he took the time to show appreciation to everyone that influenced him, which is great. And I'm so happy that he did that, because it opened up doors and it opened up eyes and ears to a lot of people, to be honest with you, that should have been considered for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame before him. Now, I don't give a fuck what anybody says. It's Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Why? I don't give a fuck. He has influence on rock and roll, and so do a lot of these hip hop artists that came before him. So we're not talking about that. There's no Music Hall of Fame. There's no overall Music Hall of Fame. So in my mind, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is it. Sorry. So what he did is he acknowledged all of these folks. And I'm so happy that he did that. And I got to respect the guy for that. It's one thing that I've always appreciated about him. And it's one thing that I've always appreciated about his generation of hip hop artists, is that they give love to the guys that and gals that came before them. Whereas today, we don't see that a lot. Like 21 Savage just came out and said Nas was irrelevant. And it's sort of like, maybe to you, but why would you say that out loud? Kodak Black was like, I've never heard a Biggie song. Like, how could, where do you live? Where did you grow up? Mars? How could you not have heard a Biggie song? So it's a generational thing to me. And I feel like Eminem stayed true to that. And he really did. He shouted out a lot of people. So, and I'll say this, like this came up recently. You know, one of my favorite rappers of all time is Treach of Naughty by Nature. And someone introduced me to a video of Eminem talking about Treach and about how he is one of his favorites as well. And Eminem was spitting verses for, for like Yoke the Joker and like stuff like that. And I was like, oh, damn, I got to respect Eminem a little bit for this, because we really do share one of these same favorite rappers. I'm pretty sure we probably share a couple. I know and in this speech, he talks about quite a few that are in my top 5. I'll get into that in a sec, because that's a whole nother thing. I don't know that I can hate on the guy anymore. I really don't. I don't, what he just did there it's fantastic. I can't hate on the guy anymore. So there you have it. Eminem's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And again, the argument whether it's rock and roll, man, no Eminem. Ugh, shut up. Shut up. Have you ever written a song? No. I love how everyone argues against this stuff, for people that have no creativity whatsoever when it comes to music, writing music, producing music, making music sound good, whether they be engineers or something like that. It's never those people. It's always, it's people. It's just people who have nothing better to do. No, I'm not going to call them haters. I'm a hater too. Don't get me wrong. I've hated on Eminem for fucking 20 years. But I respect that, and I respect what he just did. So good for him. Good for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I hope they continue to evolve and let a lot of these other artists in, because look, if you've ever been to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, it only makes it more special when you go. I've been there. It's fantastic. It's fun. I'm a music nerd, so I'm the target demographic, but I had a great time. And look, at the end of the day, guys like Eminem will get to give the kind of speech that he just gave and open people's eyes to other artists who deserve the credit that he was giving them. So while we're on the subject of hip hop, when I spoke to the person who told me that Eminem was a Treach fan, it inspired me to post because I saw a thing on Twitter, post my top five MCs. Okay. So again, this is just my top five favorite. I'm not saying they're the best, but I am because they're my top five. But I posted this and man, the backlash was, I wouldn't say there was backlash. I would say that people had, different opinions, which is great. I love that. But I wasn't expecting people did. I guess I guess there are expectations people have when it comes to that. And it's kind of funny because I've seen this trend on Twitter and other, on social media. Like recently, Brandon from Incubus was asked about, what Incubus albums are his favorites and which ones could he do without. And Chino was asked this. Chino of Deftones was asked this about his favorite Deftones albums. I'll go through those in a second. And I'll have to look this up on my social media. But so my top five MCs, essentially what I said was it goes Tupac is my number one. Will never change. Andre 3000, Treach, DMX, and Busta Rhymes. Those are my top five MCs of all time. Now, again, I'm not saying they're the best, but they're the best to me. Okay. All five of which have way different reasons for being so in my brain and heart and soul. Tupac, at a young age, I got exposed to Tupac at a very young age, and it rocked my world. There are two artists who really, like, what I can remember, like, vividly having like this, like, where I was just like, what the fuck am I hearing? What the fuck am I watching? It was Jimi Hendrix and Tupac. Now, Jimi Hendrix I had to discover through someone else, and it was kind of like forced on me. It was like a forced situation. But I didn't know who Jimi Hendrix was when I discovered him, and I was blown away. Tupac, however, was like a me discovering it on my own type thing, and I was blown away. And when I discovered Tupac, he was young. It was before prison. It was before thug life. It was social message Tupac. And it did something to my brain. It did something to my brain. But I also think as a performer, as a hip hop artist with the best voice, I think he's like top notch. Anyway, Andre, so different, so authentic, so unique. Just everything about him was his flow, his voice, his style, everything he did. His rhymes were so original to me. Treach, again, I think, Eminem said it in an interview, but Treach was for a long period of time and for like a set amount of years and a time was the guy in hip hop. And a lot of guys on the East Coast tried to mimic his style and mimic his rhymes, but he has some very underrated verses as a hip hop artist. DMX, two of the best records ever made. They both came out essentially in the same fucking year. Just nobody did what he did in that short amount of time. And he was one of the funnest people to watch. His voice, his whole essence that he brought with it was just. And then Busta Rhymes, in my opinion, is one of the most underrated rappers of all time, MCs of all time, as far as his flow goes, what he says, his lyrics, his cadence, his bars, the beats that he picks. Like people talk about like the best MCs and whether they pick good beats or not. Busta Rhymes, The Coming, front to back, is just one destructive beat after the other. And people will argue this with me, and they have. I don't care. But The Coming is one of the best records ever made. I'm not talking about hip hop. I'm talking about ever. So those are my top five. A lot of people disagreed with me on Andre and Treach, obviously. A lot of people disagree with me on Busta. A lot of people have DMX, obviously, Tupac, obviously. You know, there's Biggie in there. And look, my honorable mention is Crazy Bone of Bone Thugs. I don't give a fuck what you say. It's my honorable mention. I love Biggie. I love Nas. I love a lot of these guys, but those are my top five, and my honorable mention, my number 6 is Crazy Bone. So comment on this and tell me what you think. I already heard it. I had a Facebook post, and I got blown up by people that I haven't talked to in years. They're like, bro, you are tripping. Here's the top 5. I'm like, great, give me your top 5. So, and there were a lot of M&Ms as the number 1. And I said, yeah, I don't agree, but I get it. I get why you would say it. Just ain't for me. But interesting conversation. It always goes. It goes sideways sometimes. But I think it's funny because, with Eminem, there are a lot of guys a lot of people who I should say that just, man, they stand by it and they won't let it go. And that's how I am with Tupac. So I can respect that. I don't have a problem with that. He just never was for me, and he probably never will be. I can respect him again, but just probably not for me. So one of the other things that I talked about, or I said that I talked about recently, was, one of these trends I'm seeing on Twitter is these top 5 lists, if you will. And one of the ones recently, so going outside of hip hop here, but 2 of my favorite bands of all time, arguably my 2 favorite, probably so, Incubus and Deftones. But I saw recently Revolver put out articles with the frontmen of those 2 bands talking about their previous records and how would you rank all of your records and so on and so forth. And they both gave their top 5 records that they've done. And I disagreed with both of them. And naturally, I can understand why. They put out the records, they wrote the music, they made it. I'm a fan. So, and I'm sure if people wanted to ask me about my music and talk about what's your favorite, I already know that I disagree. Trust me, which is fine. It happens. But, so with Deftones, though, here are my top 5. I'm not going to tell you what Chino's were. Just know that they're different. But my top 5 Deftones records are Adrenaline, Deftones, Koino Yoken, Diamond Eyes, and White Pony. White Pony changed my life. It truly did. Like when I heard that for the first time, like Jimmy, like Tupac, my world shut down for a good month. It's all I did. I mean, I remember specifically when it came out, I found someone who had a fake ID, or I probably found someone who could buy booze for me. I was like, buy me a 6-pack. I went to a person who I knew could get me weed at the time. And I sat around for the better part of 12 hours, just smoking, drinking, listening to that record on repeat. It just changed my brain. So, and I remember, well, let me look it up because I'm pretty sure Chino does not have it as number 1. Let's see where he has White Pony. So he has Around the Fur at number 2 and Diamond Eyes as number 1. White Pony number 3. So we're close. We're close. It changed me. It changed me. It really did. And obviously I got a lot of arguments on that on social media. Understandable. But so then the other one was Incubus. Now, Brandon Boyd, the singer of Incubus, was asked about this by the same magazine, Revolver. Comment on your life's work and tell me what your favorite albums are. And again, Incubus, one of my favorite bands. Brandon Boyd is the reason that I attempted singing. We'll call it that. And I was really surprised at what he said about his music because he called some of it cringe and talked about, different aspects of the band and like how they went through a weird phase where that's not the music they wanted to write. But so my top 5 Incubus albums are Make Yourself. It's a perfect record. Like White Pony by Deftones, changed my life front to back, did something to me that I can't describe. It just happened. It's a perfect record. He did not have it as number 1. Like Grenades, number 2 for me. I think it's one of the most underrated records of any genre of the 2000s. Period. I have a Like Grenades tattoo on my forearm. Number 3, Crow Left of the Murder. It was an introduction to the new Incubus. You know, they just replaced their they just switched bass players. It was a new sound, it was a new feeling, it was a new vibe, and I think there are a lot of hidden gems on that record that, you know, the singles are great from that record, but there are hidden gems on that record that everyone needs to go check out. You know, Megalomaniac was a huge song for them, but there are better songs. Next one for me, Science. You know, Brandon Boyd, when he was interviewed by this magazine, called it cringe. Like, he listens to it now and he cringes. Man, I don't know how he cringes. I think a lot of those songs are so important. Vitamin, for one, for me, is like a song to this day still. Like, people are like, what are your favorite songs? Like Vitamin by Incubus. That song blew my mind. It still, you know, blows my mind. And then Morning View. Now, I didn't want to put Morning View in my top 5. I really didn't, because I really don't. I think they have other records that could be, but it's hard to deny a record that made a band global superstars. And that's what that record did. They really went from, like, you know, successful selling band of the era to global. Everyone knows who we are. We're playing New Year's Rockin' Eve. That's how popular we've become. So again, in the comments, let me know what you think about your Deftones and your Incubus. If you don't like either of those bands, I understand. But fuck you. Just kidding. We can still be friends. Anyway, so the last thing I wanted to end on, and again, it's just a top 5 list, and this is so silly, but again, I see these things on Twitter and then I go, oh, let me post that. But I named my top 5 gangster films, and man, I got more of a backlash on this than anything I posted, you know, of the last few that we just talked about there. Anything I posted, I got more of a backlash on this than anything. And it really just stemmed from the fact that someone asked, like, is Carlito's Way a top gangster film? It's my favorite. I love Carlito's Way. I think it's Al Pacino's best movie. I think it is completely underrated for what it is. I think it all around is one of the best movies, in my opinion. So top 5 for me: Scarface, City of God. City of God is one of the most underrated movies ever. If you don't know what that is, go watch it. It will blow all of what your preconceived notions of gangster movies are out of the water. New Jack City, come on, Nino Brown, please. Juice, one of the best movies ever made, and Carlito's Way. People are like, oh, wait, is Juice really a gangster movie? Of course it is. What do you think these guys are? They're holding up liquor stores and they're shooting each other and yeah, no, it's a gangster film. So anyway, I'm going to end on that. Leave me all of your comments. Leave us all your comments on your top gangster movies, your top hip hop artists, your top Deftones records, your top Incubus records, who should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, who shouldn't be. What do you think of Eminem? Just let us know, and we'll get back to you, and we'll talk about it on the next episode. So I'm going to get out of here. Again, happy Thanksgiving. This has been Raised on the Radio, episode 288, the pre-Turkey Day edition. Thanks for tuning in. Colt, we'll see you next week. We'll see you all soon. Again, have a good holiday. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.